Hi there, thank you for joining us for the October 2022 lab update here at the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy. October was a pretty big month. We had lots of interesting things going on. We first started off the month by preparing a 5-gallon custom spagyric order for a client, and that took almost 2 weeks of just running the freeze dryer every single day just to prepare the biomass for the extraction. Later in the month, actually on the 9th, it was an ideal leaf day. We ended up tincturing that product. 2 weeks later, filtered it out, and then we added salts. All of that was done within the month of October, so that was pretty big. 5-gallon production runs are nothing to scoff at. That project, though, got us running our pharmaceutical freeze dryer pretty frequently, so much so that we had a lot of interesting herbal waters to work with. So we were working with cilantro and freeze drying the cilantro. In doing that, we were doing, for this entire project, I would say probably 240 or so bunches of fresh cilantro that were immediately chopped up fresh, put into the freeze dryer. That yielded at least a gallon or so of herbal water. Now, this is a sublimated herbal water. There are a lot of different mentions of things like this in various alchemical texts. So to be able to get a sublimated water that is completely intact, at least in terms of its scent, was really amazing. That water tastes like and smells like fresh cilantro, far better than any sort of hydrosol or other type of infused water, or even the distilled phlegm out of the fresh herb. Through the Isaac Hollandus style, we were able to get a much more fresh type of water coming out of this. So that was really interesting. That sublimated plant phlegm is what we're calling it, of the cilantro, has led to all sorts of different investigations. I brought it up with a number of my alchemical colleagues, and it's kind of starting to take on a whole area of research. So of course we are going to continue researching it over here, but I'm sure other people have other ideas, working with other herbs and other things like that. So hopefully in the future there will be some sort of corpus of information where we can talk about freeze-dried sublimated plant phlegm and have usages for it, both within the herbal laboratory as well as in the alchemical or spagyric laboratories. Some of the things that we've done so far in terms of R&D, we filtered of course we have to take the product as an ice and thaw it, so we've done that and collected it. We filtered it. We've also distilled several quantities of it to check for consistency during the distillations, make sure that the scent comes over, see what types of residues stay behind in the boiling flask, etc., etc. We've also studied the differences between the product when it thaws versus the product that's distilled, how they smell, how they taste, how long they keep their taste, and so on and so forth. And then we're also running trials on the shelf life of both the distilled product as well as of the raw thawed product. And we're checking once a week for scent and taste there. So we have a lot more stuff that we will be doing. We're going to be checking into some plant magistry pathways. We're going to be revisiting some of the Isaac Hollandus pathways. We're going to be revisiting lots of different types of things using this sublimated pathway and its phlegm as opposed to some other things. And it actually has opened up an entire world of using this for cologne and perfuming, using this for beverage industry stuff, using this for, there's just like a very wide angle outside of just standard herbalist practices or alchemical practices that this can be used for and applied to. So it's really cool to kind of be at the forefront of that research, and I'm not sure why other people haven't thought about that. Usually because they're out there freeze-drying candies, freeze-dried Twinkies or whatever else, and so the quality of moisture that they're getting out of it is not medicinal to any degree. Also in October, we processed fresh trillium, false unicorn, wild yam, all of which were from Appalachia and sourced by our very good friend, Miss Lori Quessenberry from Virginia. There's some land out there that is going to be bulldozed in the spring in order to put in a 5-lane highway through that area. And apparently they do need some sort of local road and resource like this. But this mountain has just been growing tremendous amounts of medicines, American ginseng, wild yam, etc. Some of the wild yam that we got, we think is probably in excess of 100 years old. The roots were so big, so dense, so hard, so gnarly, very difficult to work with. And anybody who has worked with this one, which is not Dioscorea opacita, the one that you find in TCM, this is Dioscorea villosa. And so it has very sharp, pokey, little jagged things all over the root mass, and that proved to be pretty difficult to work with. Of course, we get it shipped to us fresh, then we process it here and dry it. We did split test the wild yam. We tinctured it fresh initially because there's not a whole lot of moisture in that root, especially the roots that came to us. We really didn't have a way of testing what the moisture is, but I would say it was less than 20%, which for a fresh root herb is very, very small. So we ended up tincturing that fresh, and then we also prepared and dried some, and then tinctured it dried as well. And we're just going to be split testing what those results are, and again, like we do with everything else, trying to find the very best way of being able to produce this medicine as a spagyric tincture. So that was cool. That was an ecological effort and an investment to go and save these medicines that would otherwise be ruined, and to support a local wild harvester in Appalachia. Also, from our own alchemiculture test gardens and research gardens, we harvested valerian root and elecampane, and we processed all of those. So every single root came to us completely dirty. We had to clean it, we had to prepare it, we had to dry it, we had to store it, all the things from A to Z. And then also by the end of the month, we took all of those root medicines and a few other ones like American ginseng and other things that we already had supply of, and we did a huge root tincturing day. So I think there's something like 20 new root medicines or something like that we got started on. Among those are going to be the Trillium, false unicorn, wild yam, valerian, and elecampane. But there's also American ginseng root, and I'm pretty sure we did turmeric root and a few others within that batch. So that was pretty cool. Then shortly after we got done with all of that, we had an immersion class, and there were 5 attendees to that class that happened over October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Thank you again to Jen, Cody, Amanda, Justin, and Christian for making that class truly awesome and something to remember. Being able to push forward and to create a spagyric tincture from start to finish in less than 72 hours, because Friday night we only have 4 hours, and during the last hour people are going through our herbal apothecary and choosing which herb or herbs that they would like to work with for their first project. And then we start the extraction process on Saturday, and then we continue through and filter and calcine and do all of the things throughout all day Sunday. We not only calcine and take it to an ash, but then I actually teach people how to properly, with good technique, be able to take that ash and to leach out the minerals, and then to crystallize those minerals through a couple of different pathways, in fact, so that they have the highest quality potassium carbonate that they possibly can, and something that is actually philosophically prepared. And everybody got to choose their own herb, work with their own tincture, calcine together, and perform all of the leachings. They got to learn how to use all of the different pieces of lab equipment. Especially for this one, it's mostly how to use like vacuum filtration equipment and things like that. But I also was able to demonstrate in this class why we don't use 40% spirit. So we took a test herb, which was motherwort, that again was an alchemiculture research garden herb that we've harvested. And we tinctured it with 95% spirit. We also tinctured it with 40% spirit. And then what we did was when time came to add the salts back, I was able to show people, like, here's what it looks like. If you have this 40% spirit, here's what it looks like, here's what it tastes like. If you have the 95% spirit or 100% spirit, then here's what it looks like, here's what it tastes like. The color differences, the taste, the flavors, the efficacy of the salts, you could tell that there is a greater potency with the one made with 95, and so that's something I like to do when people first get into this, especially because we had a couple of people who are familiar with herbs and herbalism in the past, and they always start reaching for their 40%, and it's like, no, let me show you why we don't do that. We're not looking in Spagyria for the most amount of phytochemical constituents. Half the time the items of pharmacopoeia that we're looking for are to like actually access something in the energetic constitution of the plant, and it has nothing at all to do with getting the most amount of the phytochemical constituents. And even when it does, like in spagyric tinctures and elixirs, we're actually looking just for those alcohol soluble ones, or just for the RVM soluble ones, et cetera, depending on which menstruum we're using, that are actually going to be able to create esterifications and greater chemical reactions, iatrochemical reactions technically, as a result of that base being added in with the acids, the organic acids and oils that are in the herb itself. So it was very good for them to see that you'll get a lot more saponification if you have a lower grade spirit. And sometimes that's okay, because sometimes the body needs detergent stuff too, but for the most part, the greater amount of iatrochemical grade medicine is going to be made from 95%. So we were able to demonstrate that. And I also showed them that if you do make it with 40%, here's the proper way to do it, which is to take your tincture, distill out the ethanol, distill out the water. Each of those go in different receivers. Keep your fixed sulfur, dissolve the ethanol, the fixed sulfur with the ethanol first, filter that product, then take your distilled phlegm from the product and get the rest of it, and then combine them together. And they were able to see how much more work that is, and why it's not necessarily commercially feasible or feasible otherwise, and why you may want to do that if you're doing some sort of artistic project with spagyrics, but why, if you're going for potency in the large majority of products that you're going to be working with, why you wouldn't. So it was a really, really cool class. It was really fun. I personally love deep diving on subjects that a lot of people consider to be intro, because all of these folks that come to study are like, oh yeah, I've already made spagyric tinctures. When I go through to more complicated items of pharmacopoeia and I show them like, okay, we have to do this with the salts, and then if we do this and react it and circulate it, then we'll get this crystal. They've never even heard about the proper way to work and to crystallize the salts to come up with a good product to start with. And also, a lot of their foundations for tincturing are based more in herbalism than they are in actual spagyria or more advanced alchemical works. And so getting a very firm foundation is so absolutely critical, and I love deep diving on this. I know that it's kind of considered, spagyric tinctures are like one of the first, if not the first item that most people make, but it's still the most important. It's going to be the foundation for all of the rest of the work. Unless you have a really strong foundation, you're going to suffer at later points, or you're going to have your work be marginally effective, or at least semi-toxic at the very best case scenario. And at the worst, you're going to end up hurting people, and there's tons of people out there that are doing that right now. So with that being said, the immersion class was great. That was a whole lot of fun. Shortly after that immersion class, though, Nori and I had to get ready to go to a new property that we purchased in West Virginia. And during the time that we were gone, Owen produced a double batch of liposomal vitamin C for one of our clients. He also focused on continuing to build up a very healthy quantity of salts using the potassium bitartrate pathways that we have been researching over the last several months, almost half a year now. He also oversaw the freeze drying of some goji berries for us from our alchemiculture gardens, and that was pretty much about it. But about this property, Nori and I purchased a completely off-grid 10-acre property right in the heart of West Virginia in the middle of Appalachia. And we went out there for the first time. We bought the spot sight unseen just because the price and the things that we were looking for were all in the right range. And we'd sent a couple of friends and colleagues over in the area out to check it out for us first before we ever pulled the trigger. But it showed great promise, and when we went there and actually checked it out, we absolutely fell in love with the place. It is amazing, deciduous mountain forests everywhere around us, 360 degrees all the way around us. We're way high up at the highest part of the driveway that you could possibly get. It's an 18-minute drive from the main road just to get up to our place. It's completely off-grid, set up with solar and a really simple battery bank system. Gravity-fed spring water into the house, the best tasting spring water we've ever had. 10 acres with tons of room for gardens and research facilities and all sorts of other things. Best part about this spot is that it has absolutely no building code, so we can build things however we want, whether we want things temporary and to return back to the earth, or more long-term types of structures can also be built up there. There's tons of different land features. There's some areas that are marshy. There's some areas that have creeks. There's areas that have wide springs. There's huge flat dry fields. There's forested areas. We have an enormous amount of diversity of land up there. And now that we've seen it, we're going to be putting together some plans for what to do, because eventually, because we have the ability to own this property and to actually pay it off relatively easily with the help of folks who are interested in supporting our work and buying our products, we think that we would be able to probably set up an entire beautiful facility out there and an entire retreat center and all of the things that Noriana and I, and pretty much everybody in our generation actually, has always dreamed of doing. And so we'll be kind of starting to set things up. And over the next couple of months or even years, you'll probably begin to see little promotions that are basically small fundraising events for us to raise a certain amount of finances to either repair the road or fix the, this thing, or to be able to, create a new building or whatever else. And there'll just be directed sales or, Patreon style support or GoFundMe style support even, that allows us to let you guys know what we're doing, what our goals are, how much we need to do it, and the resources we already have available that we can offer folks who are interested in supporting, so that we can get even more impact going on and show people more things. Like if we had a place where people could come and learn how to do agricultural stuff throughout the entire season, that would be a huge, huge, huge step up from the facilities that we have now. And if we can build out our own GCMS facilities, CGMP facilities rather, then that would be really fantastic for us as well. There's just so many little things that we have the freedom to do there. But it's all very new, and we haven't made a solid plan for ourselves or a solid business plan for it, or what we would want to fund first. So it's going to be many, many weeks and months probably down the road before we start trying to accrue money. We really want to know what we're doing before we start raising money for a particular task. And there's still a lot of due diligence and work to do before we get there. But it's very, very exciting. We love it. It was definitely a pain in the ass to come back to Utah after, and just into a city environment. It's not Utah per se, it's just the city environment after having been out literally in the remotest of wilderness, where we were seeing black bear and deer and possums and raccoons, and just experiencing the beauty of deciduous forests in the autumn time, just raining leaves down upon us, and waterfalls as far as the eye can see, and just beautiful hiking and mountain terrain in the middle of Appalachia with very simple people. It was just so wonderful to be in that type of environment. And then a major contrast to step back into it. And we've noticed how our health and our nervous systems actually downregulated when we were in that healthy environment, away from 5G and even cell phone. We don't, without a big booster extension system, we don't even get cell phone access out at our property. It's so remote. So to be in that environment and then to come back into a city, it really took a major toll on us psychologically, and even to a minor degree physiologically as well. So yeah, it's just interesting how inundated we are with all of those things, don't get the experience to downregulate. So hopefully in the future, Nori and I will get that experience to be able to go out there and focus on the work that we need to focus on out there to get things built up and live in a more harmonious way with the earth, which is something that we've always held as ideals and been more or less restricted from financially. And now we have a brilliant and beautiful opportunity to get into that area that meets our ideals. And we're very excited. And a lot of that is thanks to you guys for supporting our work and our business over the last many years, so that we could scrimp and save every little bit that we can and be able to make this a feasible reality. So thank you for the part that you had to play. I'm sure much more magic will happen over that property over the coming months. And in the meantime, thank you for joining us for this October 2022 lab report here from the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy. Thanks as always for all of your support. And if you have any questions or anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Support@phoenixaurelius.org. Thanks so much.